Hello. In this lesson, we will explain what a sandbox is, why it was invented, and how and why some of its features came about. Let us be clear. We're not talking about a sandbox where children play, although there are some similarities. A children's sandbox confines their play in the sand to the four walls of the box. Likewise, a sandbox for computer security confines the actions of code to the sandbox device and in isolation to the rest of the network. So if something unexpected or wanton happens, it affects only the sandbox and not the other computers and devices on the network. In the grand scheme of things, sandboxing is relatively new, and it can be used for different situations. For example, prudence would dictate that we should isolate the testing of new or modified code from the rest of the network, because the code may act in ways we haven't predicted. In this lesson, we are restricting our discussion to network security, but the purpose of the sandbox remains the same: to observe the activity of unknown code in a quarantined environment where no harm can be done. While we can say that the purpose is the same, the reasons for adopting sandboxing for security purposes are obviously different. First, let us do a brief foray into the development of network security. The history of cyber threats and network security is a story of thrust and counterthrust. The bad actors would develop a new technique or exploit some code deficiency, and the network security folks would erect a new defense against that threat or write a patch to correct the code. In this type of arms race of one-upmanship, the weapons and the measures to defeat them are becoming increasingly complex. Exploiting an unknown deficiency in code is what is known as a zero-day attack, and before sandboxing there was no effective means to stop it. Firewalls and antivirus software could stop known threats, but they were helpless against the unknown. The unknown threat, embodied in a zero-day attack, is why sandboxing was added to the network security arsenal. Any unidentified and suspicious code could be quarantined in a sandbox that mimicked a real end-user system, and then the sandbox would let the code run to see what it did. Note that the evaluation of the potential threat was based on activity rather than attributes of the code. If the code was deemed benign, then the code could be released. However, if the sandbox detected malignant intent, then the code would be expunged. When working in a piecemeal fashion, this countermeasure saw only partial success in the context of network security as a whole. Earlier on, network security was built upon point solutions to defeat specific threats. The security products stood as silos and did not communicate with other security devices on the network. This also meant that the Security Operations Center, or SOC, required a management console for each product, which made aggregating intelligence data a nightmare. And while security products were often effective at defeating the threat that they had been designed to defeat, when faced with a coordinated attack using different threat vectors and methods, they were easily uprooted. A sandbox working as a silo could not share valuable threat intelligence to the security devices on its network, or to other networks for that matter. Other problems alerted security experts to weaknesses in first-generation sandboxing and to network security in general. If the processing power was inadequate to meet demand, then network performance suffered egregiously. And if a business had to choose between security and performance, it would choose the latter. To choose security would be like the cure that defeated the disease only to kill the patient. Also, malware could be designed to exploit a specific weakness in an OS or application. If the sandbox is not testing all supported operating systems and applications, then malignant code could pass through the sandbox undetected. Last, bad actors are cognizant of the methods used by sandbox technology, and they have taken extra measures to ensure that the sinister intent of the malware is not prematurely exposed. One such method is for the code to act benignly if it detects it is being executed in a sandbox environment, or not decrypt and run the exploit code if it is opened directly or in an incorrect context. These evasion techniques mean the challenge now is for sandboxes to reflect a user's environment as accurately as possible and induce the attacker's code to reveal or execute its malicious payload. In response to these shortcomings, some contemporary sandboxes have dedicated processing units to ensure that performance is not degraded by security operations. Sandboxes must have comprehensive testing of all supported operating systems and applications. In addition, the emulator must see each and every instruction from the code that executes on the CPU, and it must emulate the end-user environment accurately. And to round off this list, the sandbox must be integrated with all other network security devices, all of which are managed from a single pane of glass. In this regime, the sandbox can share threat intelligence with all other security network devices, and ostensibly, to the Threat Intelligence Center in the cloud. The function of this center is to pull intelligence from the field and to push the intelligence to other networks. By doing so, all networks receive the latest intelligence of cyber threats and can adopt the appropriate posture. Fortinet's Sandbox product is named FortiSandbox, and it includes many of the features discussed here. Thank you for your time, and please remember to take the quiz that follows this lesson.